Okay, so I am gonna do my review of this game right now. So, to start with, I think I should go over some of the things that I go over the negatives of the game first before we get to all the positives. But to start off with, I just want to say that this game is fantastic. I love it. I originally played this game many, many years ago, uh, but playing it again has made me like it even more. I don't know exactly what it is. I mean, maybe it's just the fact that, playing it again and knowing a little bit more about how the game works and everything like that, and also playing it legitimately without using any save states and really, experiencing the full challenge of this game is what helped me appreciate the game's quality. But with that said, it's not a perfect game. Now, one of the things that I consistently complained about was the combat. Now, the combat is a huge improvement over Zelda 1, and a lot of that has to do with Link's movement. So in Zelda 1, you can only move up, down, left, right. He couldn't move diagonally. In this game, you can move diagonally, and that helps you maneuver around a lot better, and makes combat easier. He also has new moves, like the charge attack, using the Pegasus boots, and also you can do that circle attack like that, which is really cool. Unfortunately, the shield in this game is still mostly useless. It can deflect some arrows, and when you upgrade it, it can deflect fireballs. But let's be honest for a second. It's still useless for the most part. It's rarely advantageous. This was fixed in some of the later games, especially the 3D games, because they actually deflect melee attacks. But even in some of the later top-down 2D Zelda games, they can deflect melee attacks like in Minish Cap. In this game, they don't do that. So the shield is, for the most part, not very useful. You're better off just avoiding attacks. Now, the other thing about the combat, like I said, when you get hit, enemies can clip into you, just like that. And when they clip into you and they're right on top of you and you slash, you can't hit them usually. This makes combat unnecessarily frustrating. Now, an improvement over Zelda 1 is that he hits in kind of like an arc in front of him. In Zelda 1, he just did a thrusting attack directly in front of him, so you can only hit enemies directly in front of you. Whereas in this game, you can hit enemies kind of to the side too, so that helps a lot. But unfortunately, it's still kind of clunky and doesn't feel all that great. Here's a piece of a heart in here. So, yeah, that's a negative for me. Alright. The other negatives, let me think. Now, the obtuseness. I should touch a little bit on that. The dungeons are a big improvement over Zelda 1. Really, really big improvement. But they can still be a tad obtuse. But in all fairness to this game, I never actually had to consult with a guide to beat a dungeon, at least not yet. They can be long and convoluted, but it's, for the most part, beatable, right? However, this overworld is quite large, And sometimes it can be a little confusing as to where you're supposed to go next, or what you're supposed to do in order to progress in the main quest. So there were times where I had to consult with videos on YouTube to figure out, okay, what do I need to do in order to go to the next place, or where do I need to go? I mean, it does give you some markers on the map, and this map is pretty decent. I like it, and actually you can scroll around on it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like I did have to consult with a guide. This goes back to Nintendo's days of trying to sell Nintendo Power magazines and strategy guides, so you know you can get a feeling for some of that in this game. One of the other complaints I have is that even though this is an open world game, it is kind of linear, meaning that you do have to complete the dungeons in order, in a specific order. You can't do them out of order unless you exploit glitches, for the most part. And that's a shame, because it kind of gives you the illusion of non-linearity, when in fact there's a bit more linearity than is, you know, actually there. So yeah, that's mostly a problem in the open world. The dungeons themselves, they can be labyrinthian. It's not the worst, and they are a big improvement over the original dungeons. But yeah, that is an issue, you know, where the game kind of presents you with the illusion of freedom, when in fact, you know, you do have to do the dungeons in a predefined way. So I think that's all the negatives, as far as I can remember. Everything else about this game is amazing. It's awesome. You got to keep in mind, this game came out in Japan in 1991. So for its time, to have a game like this with this kind of scope and this kind of size is just phenomenal. And these graphics, even by today's standards, these graphics look so good. To go from Zelda 1 and 2 to this was a huge improvement. This game was such a huge improvement over Zelda 1 and 2. And it was a return to the style of Zelda 1, which some people, they didn't like Zelda 2 because it was side-scrolling. This is going back to the old school Zelda 1 style, which people preferred. The music in this game, I'm going to have to disagree with Nilovani. I think the music in this game is fantastic. I have no problems with the music. All the sounds are great. They sound like how they're supposed to. These tracks are memorable. And it's not nostalgia talking. Like, this really does sound great. That combined with the graphics, you know, they use some really cool effects like the rain in the beginning of the game. You know, how many games showed off weather effects? You know, for the time especially, 1991, you know, there weren't a lot. So this game was so far ahead of its time in terms of features and graphical effects and music and everything else. And it had a persistent impact on video games ever since, you know. This game has routinely been at the top of greatest games of all time lists, and for good reason. Adventuring around in this big open area, like I said, even though that there is a linear progression in which order you have to do dungeons, you can do side quests and explore the world, and find heart pieces and all kinds of things, and that's fun. Don't forget the 3D Triforce in the beginning. Yeah, that was a cool effect as well. Just exploring this area, you know, you really do feel like how Miyamoto felt when he was a little kid. He said that what influenced him to make Zelda was him exploring caves and the wilderness around his house as a kid. You know, this was his childhood. This game was what he experienced as a child, and you know, just exploring the world and finding new things is really cool. And seeing those effects, you know, when you figure something out on your own, that's so rewarding. It's so satisfying. I do want to talk about the difficulty. I think it's well balanced. Like, some of those dungeons can be so tough. But no matter what, this game is a lot easier than Zelda 1. Zelda 1 was kind of fucking insane with its difficulty. Let's be honest. I didn't play much of Zelda 2, but from what I understand, that game is even more tough. This game strikes the right balance. It's easier than those two games, but it's far harder than any of the newer Zelda games. Like, what is it? Zelda, The Wind Waker. That game improved the combat, but combat in that game was fucking easy. Like, everything in that game was so easy. I don't think I died once in that game. In this game, you're gonna die a lot. But I think it's balanced. I really do think it's balanced. It's gonna be frustrating at times, but I think, like, if you persevere, anyone can beat it. What makes the difficulty more balanced is the fact that you can have upgrades. You can upgrade your sword. You can upgrade your armor. You took a lot of damage before, but once you get your blue tunic, then you take less damage. You can carry 4 bottles and fill them up with potions and fairies and things like that. So all that stuff combined, including the improvements to combat, so you can slash and you can charge and stuff like that, and also these medallions help a lot too. All that combined helps balance out the difficulties so that it's challenging, but it's the right balance of challenge, and that's not easy to pull off. You know, it's very difficult, no pun intended, to make a challenging game that isn't too frustrating, while, you know, not being too easy. So that's basically it. I think it's a amazing game. I don't think it's the best game in the Zelda series. I do prefer Ocarina of Time. And I don't know if it's necessarily the best 2D Zelda game, because Minish Cap made a lot of improvements as well, and I think that's a really good game too. I don't know if this is better than that game or not. I mean, both of them are phenomenal. You know, it might just come down to personal preference at that point, but certainly it's a really good game, and whenever it makes the top of, like, a greatest games of all times list, I don't begrudge anyone for putting it at the top of their list at all. I totally understand, because it is a great, amazing game, especially for the time. You know, we expect games to improve as time goes on, but this game came out in 1991, when a lot of games were still linear and didn't have any exploration in their games at all. So this really was a cut above the rest. And that's it. Alright.